he lifted me up and carried me. He showed himself to me and let me know he was Jesus. And he lets you know he knows everything about you right down to your DNA. I've never felt again in my life like someone could hear and know everything about you.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide and we see God. We see his hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences in this episode, big and little God incidents. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome. So glad you're here for episode 196. A child's trip to heaven and back. This happened for Susanne. She was 12 years old. This is back in the 70s. This is her big conversion moment. This is one of those day two moments that are so profound. What is that, day two? On day one, I'm like this. On day three, I'm like that. What the heck happened on day two? This happened. And who could she tell? Who could she tell? Who could she tell this story to? She kept it a secret for a long, long time. Could she tell her parents? Not much in the faith department there. Not when you're raised in Hitler's Germany. No. Who do you tell? And how did she survive that skiing accident? Doctors and nurses sure didn't know how. And what makes Suzanne's story a bit unusual is that she says that she could have stayed in heaven. Why would you come back? What would bring her back? According to a movie my wife and I were watching last night, in the afterlife, in heaven, you can eat all you want all day long and never get fat. I mean, it's the all-you-can-eat buffet. I mean, who wouldn't want to stay for that?
You're such a radio guy.
I am a radio guy. And where are you, Suzanne?
I'm in Maryland.
A lovely state.
Yes, it is.
Named after Mary.
It is named after Mary.
There you go. So, and your background, upbringing, and all that kind of good stuff, what was in your house?
Really not religious at all. There was no practice of prayer or anything like that because my parents were survivors of childhood survivors of Hitler and the Nazi regime over there. So, religion and spiritualism really wasn't an option. It was more survival, and they had the book burnings and all that. So
that was for your parents? They were there during all that craziness?
Yeah, they endured all that craziness. They came to this country full on, planning to stay for 2 years, loved it, stayed the rest of their lives.
And you wrote a book about all this?
Yes, I did. And
want to plug it? Go ahead. What's it called?
It's called My Secrets from Heaven. And so I never shared my story until, I guess, just a couple of years ago. I wrote for 6 years in private because I wanted my children and anyone that it might help to know about what, where I've always gotten my strength and how that worked for me. Because of that experience, that was mine and mine alone. It wasn't because I grew up believing things or I was shown things or I was, in any way influenced by some sort of, this came from a direct experience that I had as a child.
God came and got you.
He came and got me and he saved me. And I'm just so grateful.
All right, let's get to that story. How old were you?
I was 12 years old, and we went, again, my family was reunited from Germany. My grandparents moved here after my grandfather retired. They built a home. We were finally reunited after the war, and it was over. My parents built a new life as adults in America, and we were going to go skiing. So we went for this hike. A blizzard came. We kept hiking, and we made it to this little private it wasn't little, it was big, but it was a private hill that was part of our community. So my brother and I, not being skiers, decided to take a few runs down the hill, and my scarf got tangled on the tow rope, which was not safety regulated. One of the maintenance men turned it on and said, "Turn it off when you leave." So my scarf got entangled on the rope. I was hung. I hit all the poles on the way up.
You're sitting, yes? Or are you?
No. I'm standing. This was a pulley type rope.
Okay, so it's pulling you back up the hill on your skis.
Yeah, really, really strong. It was a really hard pull of a rope. It wasn't like the nice gentle where you get on and sit and go. It was pretty rough. So, but we went up it, and my scarf caught on it, and so then it hung me, and it hit me into all the posts. And at the end, there was a booth, like a shack where the gears were, and there was a little cutout where the rope went in, and a cutout about, I don't know, 10 feet higher where the rope came out. So I remember, the actual accident. I was strangled and hung, and I hit the booth, and I don't remember hitting it. I'd already been beyond passed out, because I remember trying to put my hand between my scarf, one hand while I held with the other one, and there was no skin on my neck when they found me, like everything. So my scarf went through. I wound up laying there. My grandparents and my parents were at the bottom of the hill. My brother was behind me on the rope, a far distance behind. And they're watching as I go up. And then there are like 3 other levels to this hill, because from the bottom to the top, if you walk it, it would take 45 minutes on a sunny day, let alone, snow with boots and everything else. So they really didn't think there was any way I could have survived that. So my dad had to go get help. It was in the 70s.
Okay, now why aren't they just following the tow rope up to where you are?
They didn't. My parents and my grandparents didn't have skis on. They had no skis on.
So they don't know how to get up there. I mean, there's just...
No. They had no
way.
They held the rope, but they couldn't. They had no skis on. My mother tried to pull the rope, actually, to stop it, in a hysteria, and wound up pulling all the muscles in her abdominal area. And there was no one else there but us. It was just my family. I'm laying there in a heap gone, and I look over and I see this light. It's gorgeous light, and it looked really nice coming out from the woods, because it was right next to the woods. And I see like someone coming towards me, and I thought it might be my dad. And then I saw 2 others with him, and I thought, oh, maybe it's my family coming, my dad. And then I just started feeling all this love, and I thought, it's definitely going to be my family. And then all of a sudden, as I was watching, I look up, and he showed himself to me and let me know he was Jesus. And he knelt down before me, and he reached out his hands and let me know that he was there to help me and take care of me. And he lifted me up and carried me. And the 2 others that were with him, I called them angels. I didn't know it. I'd never seen angels, so to speak. So they were male, and they were wearing sort of a like work boots. It looked like boots, and one had them untied, and they were strong. And at the same time, they were very a little comical. Like, there's humor in heaven. There's a lot of humor, so they were making me giggle.
We're made in his image. There has to be a sense of humor.
There's right? Definitely a sense of humor, because he's there in all his majesty, and I'm just like feeling this incredible feeling I can't even put into words, but it was like having 1,000 amazing fathers, just beyond that. It was just so much love and information. Like, he let me know just by looking at me that everything would be all right, that he was gonna, there was no doubt in my mind that I was completely safe. And then, the 2 angels were a little funny, because one was saying, hurry up, and the other one was kind of tripping. There was a tall one and a short one, and they almost looked like warriors. So later in my life, when I would hear expressions like, God has an army, Jesus, they have an army, I'd be like, yeah, they do. They were tough, but they were completely gentle and silly with me. So he's carrying me, and we're flying, and I look down, and I see my mother at the bottom of the hill, and my grandparents, and I see what they were doing, and that later really freaked them out, because how would I have known that? They were just like, that's impossible, because of where I was and where they were. I saw my grandfather kneeling by the tree. There was a big tree, and my grandmother behind him holding him. My mother, I said, while Jesus was holding me, you're more alive than you ever thought you could be. But I felt like a bliss, just this happy, joyful, excited. Everything was so wonderful. I never felt more alive and so wonderful. And then I heard this horrible scream. And that's when I looked down and was able to witness what was going on. It was my mother. And that's when I said to him, I got to go back. She's never going to make it without me. Like, she doesn't have a chance. Look at her. Look at her. She was running around, just like a chicken with her head cut off. So that broke that moment, redirected what I wanted to do, my free will, I guess. And so when we got to heaven, or a place I call heaven, I had a whole experience there with councils, and there was a lot of decision making on whether I could go back or not. And I knew as a child that I mattered. They listened to me, and they heard me, and they heard what I felt and what I thought, and they took all of it into consideration. So I knew that it wasn't just like here's what we're going to, they collaborate. And it's just amazing. It was
this council,
yeah,
did you sense it was holy people from earth, angels? What's your sense?
So when you're 12, and I didn't have, and again, that's why I tell the German part, I didn't have a background I never heard the word like a heavenly council, anything like that. They wore cloaks, and they came from all different, like this counselor, there was like greeting me by this big tree, like this enormous tree that I remember knowing that was extremely special. And we sat under it, and they came, and they were in a circle discussing while Jesus let me sit on his lap. They came to a point where they said, does she really want to go back? And they asked me again, and they said, well, we weren't prepared for that. And they said, so now what do we do? So they called in another council, and they came, and then that council, they woke this, it was like you call your supervisor. And then this old grumpy, being guy came, and he made me study his face, and I didn't know his name or anything until I was much older. And he appeared to me old with gray hair, and I know that was for him to let me know about correlating age with wisdom. He just wanted me to know he's very wise. And he showed me that there is order, and he was serious, and he wasn't funny, and he wasn't silly. He was very serious and very specific about what he wanted me to understand. And he let me understand that there's such a big picture, and everything's recorded, and everything is known, and everything is heard and understood. And he showed me kind of like universities, and he was trying to let me know about wisdom and information. And then he showed me heaven's landscape, what he wanted me to see, and absolutely gorgeous landscape of, it's just phenomenal. The land, the flowers, the green, all of it. And I knew there were records. There were some sort of records, whether they were films or, he was letting me know that everything's kind of recorded. And they were trying to do this absolute best perfection for little me. And it just blew. It was just so loving how you feel so seen and so heard. So
Think about this. It's called the kingdom.
Right.
It's a kingdom, and therefore you're going to have different levels and officers or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it's a kingdom that rules over. So that fits.
It fits. And so what happened was, later in life, one day I think I was watching the Olympics, and that's when I heard the name, and I couldn't believe it. And someone said Melchizedek, and I had this tremendous memory of, that's who I saw. So that's who I saw. And then later on, I found out a little bit about him here, that he was a king and a high priest.
Abraham and Lot and all that time. Yeah.
Abraham and Lot. Yes. And later on, like all I knew is the being that I met. And so it made perfect sense. He was very specific on, the rules. There were rules.
And all of this on whether or not you stay in heaven or head back.
Or not. It just little me, just me.
Now, in all of this, was there a life review as there is for many?
They showed me a little bit, but no, they didn't take me through my life.
Okay. Meanwhile, you're sitting on Jesus' lap still through all this?
Yeah.
When this decision comes down, when are you told? When are you told? How are you told?
Well, it goes really fast in the blink of an eye once things are put together. For me, it was, they just kept checking, am I sure? Are you sure? And they were calling me sweetheart. Are you sure, sweetheart? It could be really hard for you. You can stay. It's really, they were worried about me as far as, wanting to return for my mom. They told me I would have pain and suffering. So they weren't guaranteeing I was going to come back with an easy road. And I agreed. I said, no, I'll take it. Oh, I've got to go, back.
But do you ever have a sense of what Jesus wanted?
Jesus, I had a ton of information from Jesus.
Okay.
So that lasted my whole life and inspired me to become an RN, a nurse for over 25 years. And I've lived it every day. So it's never forgotten it's not just one sentence. Like he's gave me so much to get through life.
Did he infuse?
Yes.
Is that a better way of saying it then? He infused in you something.
It was like when you meet him, I try to explain to people, he infuses you down to the cellular level with everything about him. And he lets you know he knows everything about you right down to your DNA. So it's an instant infusion of understanding. And I've never felt again in my life like someone could hear and know everything about you and accept you. And he does in an instant. And I mean an instant. It's amazing. He just was magnificent in every way. His kindness and his gentleness was such a strength that and I guess seeing him and then the two warriors, it just was godly. He was God, it's God. It's God. Jesus brought me back. They told me I would have pain and suffering.
Let's pause right about here. And then more with Susanne and a child's trip to heaven and back. We're going to get back to the and back part in just a moment here. Quick Patreon shout out to Tricia. Thank you, Tricia DiBenedetto, for helping us out on a monthly basis, joining the Patreon family. If you'd like to do the same, if you've been blessed by these collisions of heaven and earth, if they help you with your faith and bring you a little closer to God, to heaven, if you will, thank you so much for your support. You can come here to episode 196 and just click your way through to Patreon, or go to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack. Thank you so much for keeping this all going. All right, more of a child's trip to heaven and back with Susanne.
So it was just like this great ride back with him holding me in both his arms and just returning me to my body, letting me know he'd stay till my help arrived, and that not to be afraid. And he always told, he said, don't be afraid. I'm here and I'll always be here. And then my parents, my parents arrived. My mother was like, who was talking? Who are you talking to? And who was talking? She said, did anyone else hear someone talking or her talking to someone? And no one really paid attention because of all the blood. There was blood everywhere. And I was totally mangled up. And so he returned me, and through the blizzard, my dad had to find a home where someone was home. He had to walk through the snow. The streets were not plowed. It was one of the biggest snowstorms they ever had in Pennsylvania. So they found somebody who was a volunteer security guard kind of thing. And they had to shovel out his driveway, and they had to come with his car with chains, put the chains on. And then they had to drive me. There was no hospital in PA where I was. They had to drive me all the way to New York with those kind of injuries. And I was just couldn't stop babbling to my mom in the car how much fun I had. I had such a good time. And so My mother didn't know my story, and neither did not all of it, because she actually hushed me when I was in the car on the way to the hospital. It was
And
just
she's
all.
telling you to shush?
Yeah, she's saying, I don't want you to ever talk about this. I
Wow.
never want you to talk about this.
And
And then
again, that's the background, right? That's just this.
yes,
So
because
you're
death,
talking Jesus? Are you saying, well, Jesus this and da 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 in heaven? And are you doing the whole thing?
heaven and Jesus and these guys that came, and they were so nice, and oh my gosh, they know every. Because when he did bring me back, I had a spontaneous healing from paralysis.
Did she ever believe you?
Absolutely,
Okay.
she believed me. But I didn't know, how much. I only knew they called it my second birthday. She didn't want to hear the whole story. So I only got to tell her sort of part of it. And then she was like, no, 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 everything's going to be all right, you know. And when I got to the hospital, it turned out to be a Catholic hospital in New York. And I promised my mom I wasn't going to talk about it. She said, just don't talk about it in the hospital or anywhere. No, no, no. So I didn't, and all these nuns came to see this miracle. So there was like a sea of like 40 nuns or more surrounding me and saying, we got to put a plaque up in the hospital. This was an amazing miracle. The doctors were saying it. It was just,
What was the miracle?
the miracle that they could see was that I survived a hanging, and that I survived the brutal blows against these poles, and I had my neck, the physical injury. They were just blown away that I hadn't, had a massive brain bleed and broken neck. This I had this paralysis, but yet it was disappearing. It was like I wasn't on a ventilator. It was, because they were like looking like, how could this be? I knew they believed I was a miracle. There was no
Yeah.
way I should be alive. I had like two like baseballs on both temples of my head. So usually when there's that type of swelling, there's going to be an internal injury. I had my neck had no skin on it. It was bleeding. I had a big hole above my eye where my head was, my body, my neck, everything. I knew when I saw every nun from that hospital and all the physicians declare it a miracle, the fact that I lived was the miracle. And so they were like, how could this be? So they said it's a miracle. And that was always like a really great thing for me, like to know that people recognized that was a miracle.
Yeah.
I always was like, there you go, God, they see. And they do see. People do see miracles today, and they do see miracles. So, they're not just from the old days. They're happening all the time.
That's what Touched by Heaven's about. Everything that we read about still going on today. Same
Still
stuff.
going on today. I love that.
When they said to you, when Jesus and Melchizedek and all the council, and they're saying it's going to be tough when you go back, have you had a especially difficult life, do you think?
I don't think I'm spared any pain. I don't think I'm spared any different than anyone else. I do know that I ask for help. I do know they answer prayers, and I do know that they answer them perfectly right for the bigger picture of things. Like, I know from what I saw, there's a really big picture. It's just so, it's perfect. It's just perfect. But I think the gratitude I've had for being alive and being here is, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, nobody gets out unscathed, do they? Nobody gets out of this
Right.
unscathed.
No, we're all dented cans somehow.
We are all dented, some more visible than others, but they're dents everywhere.
There's definitely, we're getting dented.
I like that phrase. We're all dented cans.
Cans on the shelf of life. On the
That's
shelf
right.
of life.
Other people would pick up our can and go, "No, I'm getting another one." That's
And it's just really, how you look at it. And honestly, when you're having a really, really hard time, I found there's so much help on the other side, and there's help here. And if you ask, they hear you. So I don't know. That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But
I keep going back
I
to
don't want to preach. I'm
no,
not.
no, I'm
No,
like
I'm
you.
not a preacher.
I'm a storyteller, not a preacher either. I don't do it that
Storyteller.
well either.
To tell it, because telling stories is, to me, so important in humanity, because that's how we help each other.
I contend that is the missing link in church. It's the missing link, people witnessing to their experience in their lives. If
Right.
you get in front of a church and say that story, you create, I don't know if you watch The Chosen or not. Do you watch The Chosen?
I don't think I have, and now I'm
Oh,
going to
you
have
got to
to.
download the app and watch The Chosen, because that is a merciful Jesus. He's a Jesus that's forgiving. And when he needs to make a message, he makes a message of, what you got to do. He's there to guide too, but
And I'm not saying that there isn't, like, I did feel the seriousness, and I did feel all of that, and there, but I felt that it was to help you. It wasn't to hurt you. It was, these things are, if you want to have a better life, more peace, more joy, more fulfillment, more this, more that, you know, here's the manuals.
yeah, it's an
Here's
open book test.
I just know for me, I got it easy because I've seen it, so I believe it. But for people that haven't seen it, you know, it's hard. It can be hard to believe in something you haven't seen, but that's where he gives us these stories to say, you know, there are people that have experienced miracles today, and they're not just a thing of the past. They're every day. And your podcast is a wonderful platform to let people know that. But my story, to be really fair, like, I have my opinions and my feelings around it, but that's me personally. And I think the experience that I had, to tell it objectively, that's God's story. But for me, Jesus is the realest thing I know. Is and heaven and God and angel. It's just so real.
What do you think? You come back and you hear a lot of things, different faiths, different evangelists, different, and you came back and you can't put God in a box. You just
No,
can't. And
no.
so are you just compelled
So
to share?
that's such a great question, because when I come back, I wanted to go. I would go on Sunday morning. My family was still sleeping, and I was in walking distance to several places of worship. So I would go to all of them, and I'd walk and try them all out, because I figured, oh, those are God's house. I'll visit him. I thought everyone knew what I knew. I thought everyone experienced it. But I found that, Jesus was very simple for me. He was love. There was structure, but I didn't, the shame, the judgment, the guilt, that people, it made me sad to see how people sometimes will, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, well, that Jesus was he didn't come as this, beating on his chest and pointing his finger. And he just wants you to love him back. And it's not, he doesn't force anyone. There's free will. He just does these wonderful things for you to have this life and a life after. And he hopes that you love him back. And he's not going to make you. But I noticed people would be like almost threatening others, like, you've got to, or, I didn't understand that.
Yeah, some of that is just out of love. It
Fear.
really is out of love, because
I think
we want
so.
everyone to be on the same page with repentance, which is important. I'm sorry, I messed up, and I'm sorry, God.
Yes.
You kind of come back with it. I don't want to get Dad upset. I don't want to make, I want Jesus, who's my brother.
Yeah.
I want him to be approving of what I do. So I think that comes out of love. It can come out kind of weird sometimes in anger and in fire and brimstone.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I guess but that was what I saw as a child. I noticed that just didn't feel right to me. But later, as an adult, I realized, there are some kids that perform better if they're under the gun of, a punishment. If you don't get your paper in or your homework in, you're going to drop a grade, or if so some people do learn and respond better to that. And then there's other people that respond better by encouragement or a feeling of love and acceptance. So I don't know. That's not my pay grade. I'm just here to say, like, for me, he was real, and I saw him, and I was held by him, and that he's here today. He's been here yesterday, and he'll be here tomorrow. And I don't want people to ever think they're alone in the world, because they're not. And you don't die alone. When things get too complicated, I just know it's not really from God.
Is the infusion part of the reason why you became an RN? Because it was just I have to serve? Was it that kind of I have to serve as a nurse?
No, it really wasn't. He made me realize how important it is and how great it is when you can add something good to someone's life or take care of someone or help someone. And I wanted to do it. But I didn't want to be a nurse that way. What happened was, when I was a teenager, my mom took me to a professional who helped you decide what your college career was. And he sent me home with this book, and I sat at the kitchen table and I thumbed through the book. I said, God, I'm going to flip through the pages, and wherever I'm going to close my eyes, and wherever my finger stops, that's what I'm going to do. Whatever you think. What do you think? And I did that. And so I said, I want to do something in service. I do. And because he inspired me with what I experienced. So I said, I do. And so when I flipped through pages, it landed on nursing. And everyone in my family did not believe I would complete nursing school, because I didn't even like to clean out a turkey. I was very squeamish. And they were like, are you serious? We're not spending that kind of money on a college education. You'll never finish it.
Didn't like cleaning out a turkey.
I wouldn't. That's the first thing they said. They're like, she won't even stick her hand in the turkey to clean. That's how I picked my career. I picked my husband by asking and trusting. And there came this person all the way from Ohio, and we've been married over 30 years.
If they'd like to read more about this, give me the name of the book again.
My Secrets from Heaven. Every day I wake up, it's right in front of me. Like, this experience doesn't go away or get faded out like a memory. It is in your everyday life. Like, it's just there.
I tend to always ask, what's the takeaway? I feel like everything you've said is a takeaway. I could just say,
it's heavy, but I think I try to stay, to be honest, Chappers, I try to stay in the joy. I try to let people, I try to say, like, not every day has to be joy. Like, life is, an experience, and then you don't have to be alone, and you don't have to feel like no one knows you're there, or no one hears you, or no one sees you, because as an absolute, just one little light in the world, he knew everything about me and loved me, and I know that's for everybody.
Thanks, Susanne. The Bible tells us more than once to approach God as a child. And here's Susanne. There's this 12-year-old message for all of us. Here's the simplicity. This is how simple it can be. Here's Jesus saying to Susanne and to us, I love you. I'm not going to force myself on you, but love me. Not for my benefit. Don't love me for my benefit. This is for your benefit. This will make everything right. This will prioritize everything automatically. I'm the one who's going to give you freedom and joy and peace while you live in this sometimes very difficult world. I'm giving you the roadmap here, okay? I'm not pointing my finger. I'm not here to condemn you. I'm here to show you the roadmap. I'm here to give you the freedom of getting to heaven, as opposed to the slavery that is this world and sin and all that, and all that attractive stuff, all that glittery stuff that isn't so good for you. Just keep your eyes on me, and there's this beautiful path that will take you right to heaven. It's a very, very simple message from 12-year-old and now adult Susanne. It's thank you so much for this taking it back to the basics story, Susanne. Of course, you can read the entire story in Suzanne Seymour's book. It is called My Secrets from Heaven, A Child's Trip to Heaven and Back. Amazon, of course, has it. We also have a link here at episode 196 at touchedbyheaven.net. This is also where you come with your story. What is your story? Love to hear it at touchedbyheaven.net. And also here at episode 196, take a look-see at our CDs and or downloads of Did You Hear What God Just Said?, which is all about hearing God's voice in our daily lives and maybe picking up on some of those messages we have been missing. And Mary, his messenger, how Jesus keeps sending back his mom to give us some rather important information. But again, some of those messages are flying by. So did you hear what God just said? And Mary, his messenger, available here at episode 196 at touchedbyheaven.net. Okay. All right. We will see you. I'll see you. Let's all see each other next week here at Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm, Trapper Jack.
You're such a radio guy.